I've done this presentation now for dozens of business people, and everybody has gotten something from it. So I figured it was time to record it and put it up. But let's cover a little bit of AI, some very brief history, and then a couple of useful tips you can use. So the goal of AI was ultimately to replicate human intelligence, right? It was trying to get computers to be smarter. And one of those things was understanding natural language, start recognizing patterns, solving problems, and then ultimately getting into decision making. And right now, AI is already being used in a bunch of stuff that requires numbers and decisions to be made, and you just aren't aware of it as the consumer. You're already using AI daily. I mean, there's hardly any way around it anymore. All your smartphone assistants, your recommendation systems for your Netflixes, your Hulu, your YouTube, all AI driven. Your email filtering, your junk folders, your navigation, your maps, your credit card company, your banking. When you get a fraud alert, it's all AI driven. It's all interwoven into social media. Your voice to text, the smart homes, and then now it's also fully integrated into all the paid ad campaigns, such as AdWords and the Meta campaigns. It's pretty much all AI driven now. So generative AI was an eye opener for a lot of people. So they got to see firsthand exactly how far AI had come. And I remember when it first launched 2.5 years ago, ChatGPT launched, and people were blown away by what it could do because they got to interact with it firsthand and see what it was really capable of. And it's also around the time people started realizing who AI would impact because it didn't come for the industries that people thought it would first. It's coming for industries that have highly specialized knowledge, right? So think people that require a vast amount of information in order to help you guide you through that, and then the creatives it's coming after as well. It's really versatile, and people are starting to see it. So AI is being adopted quicker than most people realize. It is being thrown into almost everything and it is being used across almost everywhere. And it's going to get adopted faster than probably anything else. So it's already being integrated into, as you know, Microsoft, all of those things, your iPhones, everything is becoming AI driven. And they're now going to start building chips and BIOSes that go right into the computer. So there's no way around it. If you think you're not going to be using AI, just give it a couple of years. It's going to be everywhere. Um, but it might take some time for people to start fully understand how it works and where it is being put to use. But it's pretty much going to be everywhere. So what is generative AI? So it's an AI that has the ability to create something new, right? And when I say new, it's not really new. Think of it in the terms of if you're an artist, you go to the museum and you see paintings of 10 different fruit baskets, and then you go back and you paint a fruit basket, and then you compare it to the other 10, it's going to be awfully similar to probably a couple of them, right? So it's not really new. It's just using an algorithm or math basically to figure out in what order words make sense based on previous things you said. And we'll get more into that later. But a generative AI can create anything from words to videos and pretty much everything in between now. And the technology is advancing pretty fast. We went from it barely being able to do photos of a human to being able to do extremely great photos that you can't tell the difference whether it was shot by a photographer or created by AI. But what is cool about generative AI is that you can teach it specific things. And a lot of companies are now integrating these models on top of their custom frameworks or their proprietary information in order to be able to do things they haven't done before. I mean, think pharma, for example. Imagine if they digitized all the research they'd done, someone like Johnson and Johnson and Merck, and they could now have AI start cross comparing things. It's just the AI has an ability to access so much information that the human mind could never do it. And then you can teach it to do certain things with that information. So it learns very similar to a human, except, like I said, it can pull data that an average human being would never be able to store or be able to recall from. So what can you use it for? It's really good at repetitive tasks like emails and all kinds of stuff. It's really good at summarizing. It's one of the things I use it for a lot is I will have it summarize an article for me, or an entire document or a book. You can also use it to bounce ideas off of, like a coworker. It's really good at that. To help you write, once you figure out how to prompt it to write like you can actually have it write a lot of the baseline or the outlines for you. We've taken it as far as we've created custom GPTs, and it now writes our content that requires very little editing. Once again, you can use it to create images. You can use it to create audio files, video files. What we're finding out is that the limits right now seem to be mostly the user. So the more you learn how to use it, the less limitations you're going to have. So how do we use it? In this one, we're only going to talk about two things: single shot prompts and chain prompts, because those are going to be the ones that users will use the most. They're used differently, they serve a different purpose, and they give you two drastically different outcomes. But think of AI as an intern. If you give the intern very loose instructions, you're probably not going to get back what you hoped you would get. But if you give them detailed step-by-step instructions, then you're probably going to get better output from the intern, right? So think of AI in those terms and it'll be a lot easier. So a one-shot prompt, here's an example. I just told it to write me an 8-line poem, and it did so, and the poem is okay, it's very generic. But then, because I was speaking to a bunch of development professionals, I had it give me a more detailed one-shot prompt, which was write me an 8-line poem on Montgomery County development professionals in the style of Eminem, and then I gave it a website it could look at for reference. So I ended up with a much better poem that fitted perfectly with the audience that I was speaking to. And it was kind of cool. Here's another one-shot prompt example. And once again, this was done for real estate professionals. So I just had it write me a no pet clause for a commercial lease in Pennsylvania. And what people pointed out is that most attorneys will not put reptiles and rodents in a no pet clause, but ChatGPT did. So with a chain prompt, we are literally building the prompt for what we want. So we used a commercial lease as an example. So in prompt 1, I told it what I wanted to do, that I wanted it to act as an attorney, and then that I needed to write a commercial lease for Pennsylvania, and very little wiggle room. I gave it very loose details. It then gives me a response. In prompt number 2, I then ask it to create a questionnaire for me that I fill out, so that I can feed it back to it to then finalize the lease. And then I ask it, is there anything else we might need? And it may give me a couple of other things that I then need to take into account. So what I end up with is literally a detailed list of all the questions that it needs in order to start creating the lease. I then fill this out. I then feed it back in to ChatGPT, and then the following prompt would be to start creating the outline for each section. And we would never ask it to write the entire lease in one shot. So we ask it to write the first section first, and then once it's written the outline and then the first section, then I tell it, using the previous instructions, let's write the next or the following section. And then I just literally paste that prompt in until it's written the entire lease. Now in real life, you still have to run this by your attorney, but we've tested this a couple of times where we've run these different type of prompts. We send it to an attorney, and the cost of the review is far less than the cost of writing the actual document. Some examples that daily use, I use it for a lot of this. I have it summarize a video, a news story. If I log in somewhere and I see a story that's too long, I don't feel like reading the entire thing, I'll drop in the link and say, hey, can you summarize this for me? I use it a lot for document comparison. So you can have it tell you what the differences are between two documents, for example. You could have it write outlines for emails, create social media outlines. You can have it do a lot of things that otherwise take up a lot of time. But you could also use it as a personal assistant. It's really helpful in those extents. Just don't use it as a Google replacement. Yes, it's really good at giving you instructions on how to do certain things, but it does not replace Google for a lot of things. That is pretty much it. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I'd be glad to answer as many of them as I can.